All right, Lauren Davis.
My question was, is it possible to open a medical marijuana center in Centennial? And the answer right now is no. Even though we got the ruling that we did, Centennial, after, pretty much immediately after we won in court, ran out and they triggered their moratorium. They basically, in the interim, when they knew they were getting sued, went back and wrote a moratorium provision that said, if we lose, in layman's terms, if we lose on this argument, well, then our moratorium kicks in. And so even though we won on the bigger issue of, and the principle of whether a town can ban a constitutional use and ban this particular constitutional use by claiming that it violates federal law, in this situation, anybody who came after we won were shut out by the way they had written their moratorium ordinance. So this wasn't given to me, but it was passed over to me since it involves moratoriums. I've sort of become a zoning expert these days as well. Is there a one-year moratorium? It's not a mandatory moratorium, but what the bill basically says is that you have to be locally licensed by July 1 of 2010 in order to stay in business through sometime in 2011 or whatever date the Department of Revenue passes the regulations. There's a provision that allows, pretty much as we talked about when we were trying to come up with what towns you can currently open in. The reason that there was a very short list from lots of Colorado towns is because pretty much every town is in a moratorium period. So what the state in 1284 has allowed these towns to do is now have another year. So I think one of the questions the legal minds have to discuss is that a violation of the other law that we have on the topic of moratoriums, that these towns were supposed to be doing something in the interim to get their ordinances together. So what is the reason that by July 1st they don't have local license provisions ready for you to come and apply for? So yes, there's a one-year moratorium depending on what that town does. In other words, normally a town can have a moratorium for generally 6 to 10 months, which is kind of okay, let's put a pin in it and discuss what the issues are, how do we want to regulate this, what are the time, place, and manner that we want these establishments to operate, but they can't just be sitting on their thumbs doing nothing. They're supposed to be researching and doing things in the interim. Some towns, thanks to these guys, Colorado Springs is going to have a mechanism where you can get in by July 1, because what 1284 says is, yes, if you're locally licensed, you can stay in operation, but if you have an application pending by July 1, then once that license is granted, you can stay in operation until 2011. And then instead of you have to certify things to the state and apply to the state license by a certain date, you get 30 days from when your local license is granted. So there's still a lot more lobbying to be done with regard to the moratorium issues. Talk to your council people, talk to the people in charge of your towns, because they can do exactly what these guys created in Colorado Springs, which is allow you to get up and running when they figure out sometime before July of 2011 when, where, and how you can operate. So unfortunately the answer is kind of yes.